Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you again. I want to start out today by saying that we're doing things a little bit differently this time around. We are pre-recording, and I am not at home with all of my equipment, and I also don't have Richard. So there will be no cat climbing into the screen or potentially cutting us off by stepping on buttons. So at least there's that. But I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Pennsylvania, and we're just going to wing it today. And I think our topic and our interviewee are both excellent. So we're just going to run with it. So let me start by introducing you to Megan Sanctuary. Megan will be speaking at our April 19th through 21st God-Given Food as Medicine event in Southern Virginia. Please check it out on our website. We are really super blessed to have the variety of speakers that we have, and the topics, both are phenomenal. We're going to really go deep into preventative care and then into non-toxic healing modalities, including and especially healing the gut so that the body can heal itself just the way God designed. And that is one of the topics that Megan will be speaking on. As a certified GAPS practitioner, in addition to being a PhD researcher, Megan is a wealth of information, and she's very passionate about helping people just like we are. So to that end, I'm introducing Megan Sanctuary. Megan, say hello.
Hi, Maureen. So glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for agreeing to come on. We're so enthused. Um, so I've introduced you, but I would love for you to tell a little bit about yourself and your family and what brought you, especially to the profession that you've chosen and the line of work. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, it is quite a story. And I feel like similar maybe to other people in regard to it started personally, right? With sort of having personal medical issues or knowing like having someone in your family, like a husband or child or something, have a medical issue, and not really getting the answers that you want from conventional medicine. I feel like that's a very common path for a lot of people in this field. And that's similar for me too. So I was actually in medical school. I was an MD PhD student. So I was studying melanoma in my at the time. That was my graduate work that I was doing at the time. And then I was in my first year medical school classes. And so I wanted to go into medicine and also do research initially. And so at the time, I had a lot of medical problems that just kept getting worse. And I was young and I just didn't understand why I was experiencing them. So I had things like chronic migraines, a lot of gastrointestinal problems, other things like just sort of like weight gain that was unexplainable because I was an avid gym rat. I was in there all the time and I had really bad acne, just a lot of issues that I'd been dealing with, and just going to a lot of doctors trying to seek answers and not getting really anything that was helping, just getting more and more medications piled on. And then I'm in medical school at the same time learning these same things, and I started to just wonder, like, there's got to, I mean, this can't be the answer because
Right.
I'm not finding anything that's really helping me. And it was actually by happenstance that there's another graduate student in my group who ate a really weird diet. And we all kind of made fun of him, actually. And I apologize to him for that now. So I ended up talking to him, and he actually ended up training me. So he was my gym trainer. And after a while of him training me, he was like, Megan, you're not really gaining in the gym and you're sick all the time. And I can't really continue to work with you if you continue to eat the way that you do. And I was a little bit embarrassed and offended by that. And I was like, what are you
Ooh.
talking about? I eat like a perfect diet. I eat just according to exactly what they tell you to eat. But then I ended up doing a little bit of digging and some independent research and ended up deciding that I would just try it. So I changed my diet and pretty much immediately started to feel better and started to be relieved a lot of the symptoms that I've been having for a really long time. So that just kind of like sent me down this path of research and exploration and having a complete, just what am I doing in medical school now when I really want to focus on nutrition, and they're not teaching nutrition, they're teaching, pharmaceutical and surgical based interventions. And that just was speaking to me less and less. So at the same time, I actually met my husband. He wasn't my husband at the time, but I met my husband to be, and he had some health problems too. So he changed his diet, and so we sort of set off on this journey together, and he encouraged me to change career paths. And so I took a leave of absence from my program that I was in, and everyone told me I was crazy, and I ended up changing fields and wanting to study nutrition. So to make a long story short, I did nutrition research for a while. That's what my PhD is in, nutrition. And I got a lot of good background information about, I studied human milk and the development, infant development, and that sort of thing. So I got a really good background in nutrition and research methodology doing that. But I really still wanted to help people. And so for a while, I got out of research because there's a lot to be desired in research. Also, they take a very pharmaceuticalized approach to studying nutrition. And so I decided just to teach. Like I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to teach people about nutrition, about try to getting some truth out to people. So I did that for a while until I really felt called into my community to really start helping people. I kept having people approaching me, knowing kind of my background and asking me questions. And actually, to take a step back, I had actually found the GAPS diet, which you sort of alluded to in gastrointestinal health. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers are familiar with that diet. I had used that actually to help my husband. He had diverticulitis not too long after we met. And it was awful. And so we used that to help him recover from that. And that was actually what led me to my area of research in grad school. So I studied the gut. I studied gut physiology and development, the microbiota. I studied it in infants and also in kids with autism. And so I was just really sort of had a gap-centric view during this whole process. So then after I'd been teaching for a while, and I taught a little bit on GAPS, but it was more of in a traditional, college setting. So there wasn't too much room to teach GAPS there. But then after, I decided to really start getting back into helping people, what I had originally wanted to do, I just took the leap and got certified as a GAPS practitioner. So I've been doing that now for a little over a year, and just basically been helping people in my community. So the kind of spread by word of mouth. People started at my church with people who I'd been talking to, and some moms there who had children that had some medical issues. So I started helping them, and then they wanted to know, like, well, how do I cook these foods? So I started to workshops and just kind of teach the concepts along, like in line with the cooking techniques. So I've been doing that and just kind of taking on clients and trying to help people. And so it's just started to kind of evolve from there. And I've been trying to partner with local producers as well, like, Melvin's Farm to Fork store and some other local people that are producing the food that I'm recommending that people eat. So just trying to make connections in the community and help people.
Well, you came to me very highly recommended. And when I first met you, I could tell that I could spend days and days just sitting and talking with you because we share the same interests and you're a wealth of knowledge. I am curious. First, I want to ask you about, you said that you were eating what they said we're all supposed to eat, and then you changed your diet. So can you elaborate a little about what you were eating that you thought was right versus then what your diet became once you made that change?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was following the dietary guidelines, and mainly doing a lot of low fat, like low fat yogurt and any kind of reduced fat dairy products, as well as all like whole wheat. Like, so I would be, I'd be eating like whole wheat cereal with skim milk in the morning for breakfast, or having like low fat yogurt with granola or something. And then a lot of salads with like low fat dressing, and,
Yeah.
turkey sandwiches and turkey bacon, and, that kind of a thing. And just, very balanced. I was eating a lot of fruits and vegetables, and was eating I was eating meat, though probably not a lot of it. So I wasn't restricted in that, but I think it was just having a lot of that processed food from all the low fat
Hmm.
stuff and all the sugar.
Yeah.
And then I was very afraid of fat. I definitely was indoctrinated to believe, and told people to, like, I taught my parents how bad fat is for you. And I repent,
Yeah.
Lord, for that. But so I had a lot of, it was really funny because when me and my husband first changed our diets, he was very fat phobic as well. And it took a while, like, for us to go into the grocery store and actually be able to buy bacon and not feel just this shame and guilt. Um,
Yeah.
so when we switched our diet at the time, and I'll say that our diet has evolved since then. So we started off with more of like a paleo type diet, where we
Okay.
cut out, all grains and legumes and all dairy for a while and stuff like that. And then we've gradually kind of evolved to more of a holistic, incorporating more fermented foods and getting back on like the whole
Mm.
fat, the full fat dairy and the fermented dairy and stuff like that, as well as the soups and broths and stuff. So it has been a process of sort of tinkering and learning and changing and
Yeah.
adapting. And as your body heals, you change what you eat also. So that's been a very
Yeah.
process.
That to me is always an encouraging factor that I interject when talking with people and helping them to change their diet so that they can heal. And my husband, for instance, I'm sure this was yours too. When you're trying to heal a really badly damaged gut, there's so much that you cannot have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try to focus on what you can have. And of course, the GAPS diet begins being rather restrictive. But
Mm-hmm.
if you keep your eye focused on the end goal where you can go back to eating a wide variety of foods, that may be one reason for shooting towards that goal besides just feeling better. But it does seem difficult in the beginning, I know. Do you notice or think about how, on the one hand, you were deconstructing a God-given food by eating low-fat dairy, while at the same time we're always talking about eating whole grains? So one thing we're supposed to have whole, the other thing, oh no, you have to remove a part of it. And that
Right.
it really seems contrary, doesn't it?
Yeah, and something you
Yeah,
don't
it does.
really think about because of the way, and I think
Right.
it's the way that nutrition is taught, even from a young age, so that we don't even really know that we think about food so much in terms of nutrients.
Right.
So, like what I call nutritionism, right? Where you're just thinking about,
Mhm.
oh, this orange and how it has vitamin C in it. And you think about these eggs and, oh, they have cholesterol in it. Or you're taught like maybe they have choline in them. So they're good. So we have this very nutrient centric view of food, which makes it extremely confusing to know what's healthy and what's not. Because on the one hand, you're like, oh, well, fat is bad. So then anything with fat in it, oh, but then there's different kinds of fat and which fat. And if it has this fat in it, it's bad. And so it creates this very confusing environment where you're
Yeah.
trying to navigate. And so that's something that I try to teach people to recognize that they do, and try to
Mhm.
change the way that we view food from a holistic, natural perspective. Like, how is food made? Like that carrot,
Right.
you just went and pulled it out of the ground, and then maybe you washed it and cut it up and you maybe cooked it, But then, those Doritos, how was that made? Just trying to get people back to thinking about where food actually comes from, how it's made, to give people some
Yeah.
insight into what's healthy and what's not, because it comes much more intuitive
Yeah.
once you know some of that stuff.
Yeah, I always say that food should come from a farm, not a factory.
Mm.
And that has double meaning to me, both that processed food comes from factories, that's not what we should be eating, but also that even good food that we should be eating shouldn't come from a factory farm either. It should
Mm.
come from a real natural farming environment.
I like that. Yeah.
So, yeah, it just seems reasonable to me. Like just the same as we shouldn't be deconstructing our food anyway. Um, but you made the connection between gut health and overall health. And I'm sure this is something that you talk about, that without an intact, healthy gut, we can't be healthy, can we?
No,
There's
absolutely.
just no way.
Right. And
And
that's, you brought up how, when you start like a GAPS type diet, that it's sort of restricted. And because the gut needs to heal, and then you can go and expand
yeah.
the diet. And that is like a very unique feature of the GAPS diet compared to other diets that are used, like elimination diets, where there's not
Mhm.
really a focus on the process. It's just about
Right.
eliminating things that are at that moment problematic for you, without
Yeah.
actually fixing and addressing the problem, so that people think that once they go on a restricted diet, then that's the way that it is. And that's very,
Right.
very unfortunate. But that speaks a lot to the state of the body, and how if you heal the gut and then you can
Mhm.
become tolerant of different foods, that's showing you very directly that your body is healing, and it's more than just your gut. And one of the hardest things that I find is trying to tell somebody that doesn't have like an overt gut problem that they have a gut problem, right? So
Yes,
you're
because I
blessed,
don't.
actually. You are blessed if
Yeah.
you have gut symptoms, because then you know that you have an issue, and take the steps to learn about it and figure out what's going on. Whereas if you don't, you could have an underlying gut issue that you're not even aware is coming from your gut.
Yeah.
um, and from what I've learned, all disease, even Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut, because it's like
Yep.
that's like the roots of your tree, right? That's where all your nutrition
Yeah.
comes from, and that's where a lot of your toxins come from too. And so if
Mhm.
that part is not functioning well, there's just no way that the rest of the system is going to function the way that it should. So
Right. And I like that you bring up that people don't really often don't recognize that their symptoms and their illnesses start in the gut. And so they take a pill or they eliminate a food group with no focus on actual healing. And that's something that drives me nuts, because I want people to be healthy. You want people to be healthy and strong. And we understand that's why we're here, trying to help people to learn. And what are some factors that you think influence gut health negatively to begin with?
I think it starts really early in life. And so I think the more early insults that you have, it's predisposing you to being more sensitive and having more disease when you get older. So, of course, starting off with even how you're born. So, being born via
Yeah.
cesarean or via, vaginal birth, that will determine how your gut is populated by bacteria. And that can
From
be
the
a
very
very big
start.
determinant. And then after that, your first food. So whether you're breastfed or not. Um, and also then after that, I would say probably antibiotic exposure from a young age, all the ear infections and stuff like that kids tend to get when they're young. And so if you're just setting up on that track of just, one insult after another. And so if you have maybe just one or two of these things, then, you're more likely to be okay. But if it's just sort of like repeated insults where you have the cesarean and then you're fed formula and then you've got these antibiotics, and then depending on what your diet is after that, as well as other environmental exposures, because other things act as antibiotics too, even if you're not taking an antibiotic pill, if you're drinking chlorinated water or fluoridated water, or there's other things that can cause similar effects as antibiotics that a lot of us aren't aware of all of them. And so there's just a lot of toxins in our environment that can damage our gut. And the more of those you experience, the bigger impact it's going to have.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is a whole lot of that happening for the last 30, 40, 50 years, especially though, I think the last 30 years, it's just gotten worse and worse. But you see babies starting off on not only formula, but how about soy-based formula? That makes me so angry that doctors even recommend that because
I know.
I'll let you expand upon that. You are truly an expert on feeding children and feeding babies, and I think I've earned my expertise through having 9 kids. But boy, when I hear that a baby is on soy formula, I'm like, please stop doing that.
I know.
Please stop doing that. And when our second son, our 4th child, was born, he was born with gut damage after I'd taken an antibiotic early in my pregnancy. And I did a lot of soy for protein because I was following all of the recommendations. So he had really severe gut issues. And it took me 6 years to get it completely figured out and straightened out. But I gave him soy in the beginning. I nursed him, but I was still taking him soy. Soy is really damaging to a baby's gut, isn't it?
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And, there's degree. I mean, in general, formula, I compare formula to human milk as sort of like a whole food processed food, right? It's the same thing
Yeah.
where the formula and formulas are made differently. So there's a lot of different types of formulas. Some of them are based on, like, the best ones are based on fat-free milk, kind of like, so that's the wholest ingredient that's in there. Where a lot of them are not even based on that. They're based on cow milk, protein. And then you have the soy formulas that are based on the soy protein, but none of them actually have any kind of dairy fat in them, which is one of the most vital components to milk in terms of development of the gut, of the brain. That's like one of my favorite components to study is the human milk fat, because it's so unique in nature. And it's just this beautiful, beautiful system that's specific to the mammary gland. And just the way that God designed it is just exquisite, to allow for the digestion by the infant that is not, its gut is not very well developed. And so it's a beautiful system of delivery of fat from the mammary gland that it's not even close in formula. So in formula, they're using plant oils to replace, and it's usually corn oil, it can be soybean oil. And they're not in the correct structure. They're not the correct length, or they're just not the right structures for the infant. The infant can't digest them properly. It causes a lot of inflammation in the infant gut. And so when you have the soy, you have the soy oils a lot, especially in the soy formulas. So then you've got the soy protein and you've got the soy oil, and that usually is packed with just phytoestrogens, which are very disruptive to the endocrine system, especially of a developing. I mean, they're disruptive to our endocrine systems, let alone that of a developing infant that's not regulating, very well. And so it's just causing a lot of insult to such a small body that's just learning, that's just developing. And honestly, I'm surprised how well kids develop, like you said, like God really designed our
Yeah.
bodies to handle a lot, because I'm surprised every day
Yeah.
how well people are doing considering, you know, what
Considering
we
what
feed
they've
people.
been putting in their bodies all these years. Yeah. And I remember I frequently hear or read about a baby consuming soy formula is taking in the equivalent of like one or several birth control pills
Probably about
in
5.
phytoestrogens. Yeah.
Yeah, per day. Mhm.
That's not okay. That's
Right.
just not okay. So also, and maybe you can address this a little about how the human breast milk changes throughout the course of the growing child's
Yes.
nursing needs.
Yes.
So what are some better options then? And
So,
I know what,
so let me just
but I
speak
want you to,
quickly, just because again,
yeah,
I love to glorify God in this, because the more you dig into milk, it's such a dynamic biofluid. Like it starts, so it changes, you know, throughout, not just throughout. So it starts off at a certain, you know, you have colostrum right when the baby's born, and then you have the transitional milk, and it's very specific to the need of that developmental stage of the baby, what you're supplying through the milk. And it even changes with preterm delivery. So the body will actually adjust so that if the baby is born early, the milk is early too, and it's specifically, you know, designed for that age of development. And so it changes throughout the period of development to give the baby exactly what it needs. And not only that, but it actually changes throughout a day. It changes throughout a single feeding, so that you have, you know, certain factors that increase, especially like fat will be low at the beginning of the feed and then be really high at the end of the feed, and it helps satiate the baby so that, you know, the baby recognizes that it can stop feeding, which you have a problem with in formula fed infants, that they want to keep eating and eating and eating, and they have a hard time regulating, and then they try to restrict, you know, formula and say, oh, only feed them so much formula every period of time, when, you know, that would be really hard on an infant, you know.
yes, yeah,
So I just want to speak to that quickly, because that is something that I don't know if you can possibly replicate with any substitute. Now, there are better substitutes than what is available in the store. And so that is actually something that I had to utilize because I had twins. And so when they were born, and I was a new mom and I knew nothing, I knew nothing about it. And I didn't really have very much support and stuff like that. And so I tried to nurse them, but I had a really hard time feeding both of them at the same time. And I was having a little bit of problem with my milk production, but I was like, I cannot feed them formula from the store. Like, I just know too much about this. I can't do it.
yes,
And so I ended up finding Weston Price's, you know, homemade infant formula
yep,
recipe. And so we had to emergency style kind of get all the ingredients and stuff like that. And my husband is such a
yeah,
scamp because I'm trying to feed them. He's like looking up stuff. And anyway, so we were able to do that. And so we did about a half and half, where I continued to nurse them and pump. And then so we did half that formula and then half breast milk until they're about a year. So so yeah, so that would be a better option, because the Weston Price formula is based on whole raw milk. So, and cow milk isn't actually that much different from human milk. I would have thought it would be a lot different, but from my research, it's
yeah,
a lot less different than I thought. So again, not ideal, because it is a cow, it's not a human, it's not, you know, dynamic the way that the human milk would be, but it is, I still consider it to be a whole food, because you're sort of changing some of the levels. So adding a little bit more fat, adding a little bit more whey protein, and just sort of modifying it a little bit to be closer to human milk. And so that's gonna be a much better option if it's possible for people to do, than to buy commercial formula.
yeah. because I got pregnant very soon after he was born. I think he was 5 months old when I got pregnant with the next child. And I had tandem nursed, and I had nursed through a couple of pregnancies, which I don't actually recommend because it's very taxing to the mom's body.
Mhm.
But at any rate, my milk supply dried up, and he went from happy to fussy, and I realized he was actually losing weight. So at that point, I started making the homemade formula from Nourishing Traditions, and
Mhm.
he thrived. He stayed on
Mhm.
it for a year. He absolutely thrived. It was wonderful. Of course, I had my own milk cow, so I had my own
Oh,
cow's milk to work with. I also noticed, though, that initially I didn't have all of the ingredients, and I don't remember specifically what I was missing, but there were a couple of things, and he became constipated just immediately.
mm,
But I had ordered the Radiant Life catalog, actually has all of the supplies, everything but the milk. You can order a whole kit from them.
yes.
Maybe you did that, but I went ahead and ordered from them the couple of things that I did not have, and immediately the constipation went away, and that from that point forward he thrived. So I've made that same recommendation, as I know you have, over and over again, and I've never heard anyone say that it did anything other than help the child to thrive. Now, sometimes, of course, babies are born with severely damaged guts, in which case they're not going to be able to handle the cow's milk formula
Mhm.
or even sometimes the goat milk formula, in which case they need to go to what we call the meat-based formula. Can you tell us some about that?
Yeah, so there that again is a testament to how, like you said, that things are getting worse and they continue
Mhm.
to decline, because now you're seeing these problems in babies that just didn't exist, you know, a couple of decades ago. So first of all, you're seeing more and more preterm birth, like early and earlier
Yeah.
birth, and these babies are born with very immature guts. Now, for them, as far as I know, I still think human milk, unless they have an actual, intestinal disease. But that just again shows you about our environments and toxicity. And I think a lot of preterm birth is due to malnutrition in the mother. But
Thank
anyway,
you
and
for saying that. No, I want to, let's not lose that thought, because I have thought that for years and I've
then,
never heard anyone else say that, Megan.
yes,
That is so important. Do you want to just for a moment address that?
sure. Yeah, because it's a pretty, like, if you would talk to midwives, which I've talked to several of them, and that's, talking to them, and they are convinced too. I don't have, like, haven't looked into the research on this. I don't even know if there is, but just anecdotally from the experience of midwives, they can tell, they know that that's what
Yeah,
causes it. That, if you have a very well nourished mother, then she's going to carry to term if you have a malnourished mother. And some of the hypotheses that I've heard from midwives is that it's because there's like like a risk benefit analysis on
mhm.
the part of the infant. Like, basically, the infant is in utero and it's not getting the nutrition that it
What it
needs
needs.
to develop.
Yeah,
So it's like, okay, well, I can either risk it and stay here in this malnourished environment, or I can go out into the world and see if there might be more nutrition out there. So again, that's not proven or anything, but it's an
right.
interesting idea about maybe why infants are born earlier. And it could be toxins
Yeah,
too. It could be a toxin exposure that is causing, the infants to try to. And so again, I don't know where that decision is being made. I don't know if it's in the infant or in the placenta or something like that. But yeah, I've heard that from many midwives saying that there's definitely a nourishment component to preterm birth, which, goes along
I'm
with all the trends.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I thought, yeah, I've wondered if at home with a midwife, um, and I always nursed them, and it wasn't a conversation that we ever had, though. It was something
Mhm.
that I thought of much later. I've also thought that perhaps there's also a component of protecting the mother. Um, I always say that infants are not vegan and they will take from the mother's own body what they need if she's wrong. So perhaps there's also a protective factor there for the mother's own health and survivability. But
Yes, that could definitely be part of it
what
too.
I
Because
just think that
the
yeah.
maternal store, yeah, she'll pull calcium out of her bones. Like she will
Mhm.
start to break down her own reserves in order to, supply them to the infant. So yeah, that's very possible
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, but you have, say, a premature infant because for whatever reason, let's just say that they didn't have enough nutrition inside in utero. They have a damaged gut, maybe for a variety of reasons. And if the mother's eating a good diet, it's probably still best. Well, if the mother were eating a good diet, the baby probably would not be in that condition anyway. But where breast milk isn't an option for one reason or another, and we want to avoid soy milk formula, and even the homemade cow or goat milk formulas aren't working or aren't going to be safe for a baby with a severely damaged gut, then what else can we do?
Right.
Have
So
you had
the
a lot of
other,
experience doing a meat-based formula with raw?
yeah, so that brings me to because so I mentioned the preterm infants, and there's this other population of infants with a disorder called FPIES, which is new in the past probably 10 years or so. And that's food protein induced enterocolitis syndrome. So basically, they're intolerant to all protein for the most part, so they'll be intolerant to their mother's milk, they'll be intolerant to any kind of formula.
Wow.
So traditionally in medicine, what they'll do is they'll put them on an elemental formula, which is basically just amino acids and just yuck. And so those babies do not do well. It has a very high mortality rate. But like you said, there are things that even these babies can tolerate. So if you put them on like a meat stock based formula, um, their intestines will heal, and then they will eventually, I mean, these types of babies, they're probably going to end up having a lot of food restrictions for their entire lives, just because they're so, they are so damaged. But they can go on to, going through the GAP stages and getting probably pretty high up in the stages of GAP. So starting to be able to eat some of those foods again, probably never getting to like a full GAPS protocol. But still being able to actually thrive on the food that they're eating, which again starts off based on meat stock, and usually with a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of like liver, like because that provides a lot of really easy to digest nutrients, and egg yolks. So these are the most digestible, very,
Yeah.
very nutrient dense foods that you would need for that stage of development, when you need just to pack as much nutrition as you can into the smallest amount of volume that is very digestible. That's going to be something that they will still be able to tolerate and thrive on. And really, I believe the only hope for that kind of a situation.
Yeah, in nature, they just wouldn't survive
Right.
without this kind of knowledge and availability of truly healing foods. Um, that's really important. So I have never I've never delved into the meat-based formula myself, but the cow's milk formula worked for Wilson, and he's 6'3", I think, and healthy and strong, so it must have worked. But
Yes.
I really have a heart for families feeding children and not understanding that the problems that they are experiencing, including learning problems, that it all relates, or at least 98% of it relates to what the children are being fed.
Mhm.
And I'm very eager to get into this with you at our event at Melvin's Farm to Fork, because I'm hoping we have a lot of young families there, and these moms and dads can learn about both the toxic effects of processed food, but how we can feed our families well to obtain real sound health and nutrition. Um, that's the thing I'm most eager about. But also the GAPS diet and gut healing, and I'm eager to hear you talk about gut health and why it's important and how our gut health affects everything. And specifically, that pills are not the answer. Infusions are not the answer. Um, the answer is healing, right? I have one friend who, like my husband, had ulcerative colitis, and bad. I mean, his was bad too. It's not anymore because of his diet, but she did all of the medical stuff and went from one medication to the next medication to the next medication, and ended up hospitalized several times. And then she's on infusions, which are chemotherapeutic. Am I correct? They're trying to shut down the body's immune system. Well, God gave us an immune system for a reason. And the problem with an overactive immune system is not that it's in and of itself overactive, it's that it's a condition stemming from a damaged gut. But there's hope. And that's what I want to give people, hope. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to stay that way. And I know that, and you know that. We really want to share that with everyone out there. All that ails you does not need to define you or hold you back. It doesn't have to be permanent. We want to talk. We will talk in depth in April about how to heal a damaged gut. And I have seen it happen, and I know you have too, over and over and over again. I've done the GAPS diet in my home several times with a couple of kids and my husband. My husband would not still be alive, I'm sure, without it, and he still has to follow most of the principles because he's gone around 2 times now with some pretty serious stuff. But most of the time, GAPS diet, it helps, and helps the body to heal completely. There are some conditions like what is the mitochondrial? I can't say it right now. Aaron knows because Aaron's got that going on. But there are a couple of other conditions that the GAPS diet alone doesn't take care of entirely. But we just want people to understand that health begins in the gut, including mental health. And I met someone within the Weston A. Price community years ago who was schizophrenic and manic depressive, living on the street, couldn't function. She was a wife and a mother, couldn't handle life at all until she learned about someone, I guess, took her in and helped her with her diet so her gut healed. And when I met her, and I have seen her several times since over the years, she's perfectly fine, a beautiful, wonderful person. And of course, went back to being a wife and a mother. And it's all because she stopped relying on pills and understood that it all begins in the gut. So, Megan, I'm really eager to hear you talk about all of that and teach us. And I'm so grateful. Is there anything more you'd like to share with us before we close today?
Yeah, just to expand a little on what you said about, the GAPS diet. Yeah, there's definitely like with the level of toxicity that we're experiencing. I feel like GAPS used to work pretty well for most things, and it's become that we need more and more. So I think that GAPS is like foundational, so that before you do other things, like, because one of the main things that GAPS does is restore your body's ability to detox, because your gut is your detox pathway, so that even if you need other things, which is usually some sort of detoxification and then maybe like anti-parasitic protocol or something like that, then you still need foundational. You need to have nutrients, you need to have that nutrition, and you need to have your detox pathways open. So GAB's foundational. And then after, once you've sort of established that baseline and gotten that nourishment up in your body so that your body's actually able to handle a detox. Because I know people that try to do a detox just, cold on like a normal diet, and that is never, that is not going to work. It's going to be extremely painful. And so I think that having that good foundation and then building out from there based on, and you'll see a lot of things go away, and then you'll maybe have residual symptoms that maybe need a little bit more. But if you just try to do a detox without kind of dealing with, the basic nourishment of the body, you're going to have a really hard time doing that. So that's, but I agree that like now we definitely need
there's so much toxicity. And we are going to be addressing detoxification with Dr. Patty Powers as well. We're going to talk about all of that parasite toxicity period and ways of dealing with that. And I have experience with things like coffee enemas, and I just recently purchased a far infrared sauna blanket.
Oh, cool.
I'm so haven't made any, I have not come to any conclusions yet. I've used it. I bought it primarily for my husband to help him with detoxification because I know it's a problem for him. But we'll be getting into that with Patty Powers, and I'm glad you brought it up because that is a super critical component also to our health, and we're often very compromised in that regard as well. So, well, Megan, I'm going to sign off for now, but it has been wonderful. This has been a fantastic conversation. I hope that you viewers find it very helpful and encouraging and inspirational. Come to Little Works, Virginia, April 19th through 21st for the God-Given Food as Medicine Conference, and learn a whole lot more from people like Megan Sanctuary, and Dr. Patty Powers, and Mandy Bloom, and Karen Winstead, our midwife, and Dr. Stephen Hussey. And I'm even going to talk a little bit, but I'm going to let you do most of the talking. So thank you very much. Everyone, check out our website. And Megan, where can people find you?
So I do have a GAPS Facebook group that you could probably search for if people are interested in joining that. It's mainly based locally, but I am expanding it to anyone who wants to join can come. My website is currently under revision, so I'll be sharing that information once I get that up and running again.
Okay, so no website to look for right now?
Not right now, but that will be fine.
I did have your website open for like 2 months on my computer. I kept going back to it, but
I think there is one that has it just has my like my biographical information on it. So if you want to go to FIM Nutrition, it might be fimnutrition.com or Nutrition Inc. I don't even remember, but that one has like all my biographical information on it. But I'll have more of a business website.
And once that's ready, we will add that to the show notes. Okay. So just let us know and we'll put that in so our viewers can find that. So, but for now, we're going to sign off, and thank you so very much, Megan. And thank you everyone for joining us. Please leave comments and questions, and please do like and subscribe and absolutely share to your heart's content. Thank you and have a great day.
Well, thank you so much.